5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Over. Stan Tinsley speaking. This is the 6th day of August 1990. I'm interviewing Miss Rita Bateman at her home in Knoxville, Tennessee, in regard to her services with the Red Cross in the latter part of World War II and the Korean action. Miss Bateman, when did you join the Red Cross?
July 1945. No, wait a minute. Yes, that's right, July 1945.
Okay. Why did you pick that particular branch to go into?
Well, originally I was helping a friend of mine, assisting a friend of mine in getting a job with Red Cross, and when I took her down there, they asked me why I didn't apply, and I advised them that I wasn't a citizen of the United States, but if they're interested, that I would obtain my citizenship. And they said yes, so I filled out an application and I got my citizenship and went into Red Cross.
That's right. What do you remember about leaving home?
Getting on a train.
Didn't bother you particularly?
Not particularly.
You probably traveled quite a lot before that time, then.
Yes, I had traveled back and forth to Canada quite frequently.
A lot of these people, it's the first time they've ever left home, is to go into the service. They have a lot of reaction. How old were you at that time?
I believe I was 18.
Anyone else in your family in the service?
My younger brother was in the airborne troops, and my older brother was in the Royal Canadian Air Force.
Tell me about the different places where you trained and where you worked before you went overseas, what you did here in the States and so forth.
Well, first, as you probably know, I went to Europe, and secondly, I went to Korea, Japan and Korea. Prior to going to Europe, in 1945, we trained in Washington, D.C., and I believe that was the extent of that. It lasted for about a month.
You sent from there to there to Europe?
Yes.
Okay.
We left New York on Queen Elizabeth.
What sort of training was it?
To tell you the truth, I don't really remember what it was. Just rules and regulations regarding Red Cross and our association with the troops.
Tell me about the crossing and what went on in Europe.
You mean
chronologically, as close as you can.
Well, we left New York in July, as I recall, and we landed in England first, and were in London for a few days, and then we departed for France. And I remember that I don't know whether we arrived in Paris on Bastille Day, but it was quite an experience. And from there, I went to Wiesbaden, Germany.
How long had Paris been liberated when you went there the first time?
I don't recall. It was 1945, Bastille Day.
So it hasn't been liberated too awfully long.
No.
I guess it was a big celebration.
Yes, there was dancing in the streets. It's quite a celebration.
After you left Paris, you went
Wiesbaden. And in Wiesbaden, the head of the Red Cross thought that it would be a good idea for me to get into Cinemobile, which is a showmobile unit. Being very musically inclined, they thought, well, we wanted to do something, so they sent me off to study magic with Frank Dexter, who is one of the foremost magicians. I believe he was in Paris at that time. And I studied under another magician, I forget his name, in one of the Scandinavian countries. Then I came back and joined a troupe. And I first started out with James Mason and Pamela Drake in a unit. At that time, James Mason and Pamela were with the English Red Cross and I was the only one of the American Red Cross in that group.
after studying magic under these two people, did you then display what you'd learned on some type of show that the soldiers watched?
Yes, I performed on stage and in the showmobile and some of the Red Cross clubs. A lot of the soldiers were so interested in it. Some of them were magicians and would teach me some of their tricks. So it was an exchange proposition, and it was quite exciting.
What did you think of the people you worked with, Masons and others?
Well, I guess I didn't work with the Masons as long as I did with the other Red Cross girls. I guess I worked with them maybe a couple or 3 months, and it was a different experience, to say the least. I enjoyed working with the Red Cross people.
I guess the Red Cross people you worked with were from all different parts of the country, weren't they?
Oh, yeah.
Did you get leave at any time during World War II to come back to the States and then go back to Germany?
I resigned in 46. I was over there about, I don't know, about for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided to come back at the end of that year. And when I got to the States, it was so difficult for me to adjust. I felt like a displaced person, that I signed up again to go to the Far East, and did not decide that I would go to Korea until I got to Japan.
Do you still keep in touch with any of the people you met during your service in the Red Cross?
Yes, I do. Every Christmas I receive a card from several, and matter of fact, I was in California last year and saw 2 of them. One of them was my roommate in Germany, and the other, she was a singer, and the other was a hospital worker, Red Cross hospital worker in Korea. And I hadn't seen either one of them for 20 years, and it was like no time had elapsed.
What kind of careers were they engaged in now?
One that lives in San Francisco that I met in Korea is a retired social worker. She was a director in her region, which is pretty high up in the social work field. The other lady did her musical career after she got back to the States. And she's now retired.
What do you remember most about your time in Europe?
Well, it's almost like a closed door. It's hard to, I don't reminisce about the experience or experiences that I had, but as a matter of fact, I think mostly of my trips to Eder Oberstein. Eder Oberstein is a jewel center in Germany, and I used to go over there quite a lot with an army colonel, and he'd buy jewels and just enjoyed that type of experience. We both like the same things.
What were your relationships with civilians in Germany in particular?
Well, we did not have any personal relationships other than, say, we didn't have any personal relationships because actually the ones that we knew most worked for us. We did cleaning and helped us to learn their language. We tried to teach them our language, but they were far more versatile with the English language than we were with the German. In both countries, both Germany and Korea, who worked for us are the ones we knew the best.
Did you have any contact with troops other than American? For example, English or French troops?
No, not really. But on leave, we now and then to meet some of the Russian troops.
What did you think of them?
Well, we had the feeling that we weren't supposed to be walking down the street with the same street with them or looking in the same window.
Did you ever wonder why you were there and why you gone over there, and was it worth it?
Well, it was worth it. In retrospect, it was worth it. While we were there, I had the feeling that I'd never get back home. That life and experiences you had, you just didn't bother to repeat them to anyone because they're just unreal.
Can you tell me about any of them?
Well, I remember that I took some Red Cross ladies to Eder Oberstein, and before going, or on the way, to them that they had to do everything that I told them to do. And it was an open command car that we had. As you know, a command car is larger than a Jeep.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a large group, and I guess there were about 6 of us. And they had gone into this man's house to see what kind of jewels they had, because they wanted to buy some. So they stayed and they stayed. In other words, we went in groups, but at twos, and then maybe 3 would stay in the truck in the pan car, and 3 would go in. Well, they stayed and they stayed, and one of the German boys came out and he said they're getting ready to take your car and steal everything you have. And I said, I know. In other words, the command car was surrounded by German civilians, and most of them male. So finally, we got the girls out and into the car, and by that time they were taking off my shoes. And I was sitting on my camera trying to keep them from taking it. In other words, they but anyway, it all ended up safe and sound, but on the way back we did have a flat, and it was in dangerous country again, and so we managed to change the tire ourselves and get going before we were mobbed. But those were 2 narrow escapes, and I decided at that time I wouldn't take any more Red Cross girls to either Oberstein.
No, but what did you plan to do when you came back from Europe?
I'll tell you about another experience
Yeah,
I had.
okay.
I was on the way to a show, to show a movie, to a camp in I believe it was one of the cigarette camps.
What about cigarette camp?
They had like the Lucky Strike camp in Normandy, up northern France, yeah. And I was running late, and I got lost, and just knew approximately what direction I should be going, and it was dark, and I got to a river, and I knew I had to get across it, and there was a boy, and they said they couldn't take the truck. I had the big truck, the showmobile truck. They said they couldn't take the truck on the ferry because the truck was bigger than the ferry. I said, I've got to get on the ferry. I got the truck on the ferry, and the people who were on the ferry stood all around the truck. And when we got to the other side, the ferry operator said, look, I don't know how you're going to get off. I said, well, let's just get 2 boards. And I said, and we put the boards between the ferry and the land.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, they'll break. I said, well, we'll try. And so I got on in the truck and the hammer down and gunned the truck and shot up the hill. The ferry landed out in the middle of the river. But I didn't, the boards didn't break. I wasn't on the boards long enough to break. And one of the passengers of the ferry ran up the hill. Of course, the passengers got off the ferry before I did.
Mm-hmm.
And when I The best driving I ever saw. I said, oh, you speak English. So anyway, that was quite an experience.
Was it a civilian ferry or a military
A
ferry?
civilian ferry.
Civilian ferry.
But as I say, the Germans, they spoke better English than I spoke German. Anyway, that was, I remember,
that's different from what you run into in the States, that's for sure. See, now, tell me, you stayed over, how many months were you overseas?
I was in Germany and France about a year, and then in Korea I was about a year.
You came back to the States and then went to Japan.
I came back to the States from Germany. I resigned Red Cross and re-enlisted with Red Cross.
You were having, if you care to comment on it, why do you think when you got back from Europe you were having trouble adjusting to
Well,
life?
I had, as I said earlier, I had become an American citizen, U.S. citizen, I should say, to be eligible to go with Red Cross to Europe. When I got back, my mother had left Tennessee to go to Canada to take care of her. And my two brothers had joined the Royal Canadian Air Force. He was not eligible to join the United States because he was Canadian. But my younger brother, who was born in Tennessee and was a U.S. citizen, joined the paratroopers. So he was still in the paratroopers. And my older brother, who had returned from Royal Canadian Air Force, had joined my father in Canada to and also to go back to the university. And so there was no one in Tennessee of my family. And I was a U.S. citizen and didn't know where to go or what to do. So I realized that after I got back from Japan that I'd just better go to the University of Tennessee because it's the only university that I would have in-state tuition. So that's how I ended up in Knoxville.
Let's see. Your family, your mother and father both were in Knoxville at one time.
No, not my father. My parents are divorced.
That's right.
And my father was in Canada and my mother was down here with me.
That's right.
And we weren't in Knoxville at that time. We were in Nashville, where my father had originally set up his business with the Bateman Construction Company.
Tell me about Korea.
There's not much to say about Korea. We were stationed in Busan, which was on the beach. You couldn't use the beach. You swim in the water, though, because of the parasites. There was no life except base life. There wasn't anything to do when you're off duty except to go to, well, we did go to Seoul quite a bit.
A civilized place to be as far as theater, movie, that sort of thing.
No.
Places to eat.
No places to go or to eat.
I see.
Seoul was full of, at least to my knowledge, there weren't.
Mm-hmm.
There might have been places for the enlisted men to go, but no real place for.
And you were in Japan after Korea?
I was in Japan for a very brief period. We landed in Japan, and I had the opportunity to either stay in Japan or go to Korea. I elected to go to, and probably would have been better off to stay in Japan, but.
Do you have any particular feelings about men of draft age in this country who managed to, one way or other, avoid the service?
Well, yes, I did. To be honest, I did. I was partial to the brothers enlisted, of course, and maybe that's why I formed that.
Normal reaction. Did the war affect you and did it change you?
Oh, I don't think it did change me. I guess one of the things that did affect me quite a bit is when we got to Wiesbaden in Europe, in Germany. The odor of the dead bodies under the debris and seeing all the destruction, I guess did have an effect on me. You see, it was so soon after the end of the war that they hadn't really cleaned up.
Mm-hmm.
And the flies were just something awful.
Yes, that was the dead bodies were from the bombing, weren't they?
Yes. And incidentally, I learned later that our headquarters, our Red Cross headquarters, was in Wiesbaden. And I learned later that my brother had been over Wiesbaden a number of times bombing, and was, matter of fact, shot down over Wiesbaden. He managed to get back, even though it didn't come all the way down. As I understand, the plane was pretty much, they very nearly had to land.
You think the war changed the United States?
Well, it raised prices.
Other man said that's when all the trouble started.
Yeah.
The crime, as you
Yeah.
trace it back.
Yeah. You know, incidentally, I didn't mention to you that I was in Frankfurt, Germany, performing some of my magic. And after the show, my brother came backstage and said, "I didn't know you were in Germany, and I didn't know you were a magician."
That's great.
We ran into each other.
Well, I guess you knew he was in the audience.
I didn't know he was in Frankfurt. I didn't mean to change the subject.
Oh, I'm glad you did.
And then I ran into him accidentally in Paris.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Later.
Been in the RAF for quite a while.
Now that brother that I mentioned in Frankfurt was the one was the paratrooper, and they were stationed in Frankfurt, and I didn't know that he was in the Eisenhower compound.
The other brother was in the Royal Air Force. He must have
in England, yeah.
when the going was tough, wasn't he?
He was there when the going was tough.
It sounded like it, but
So he was out before I came back,
Mhm.
and In fact, it's hanging in the den in there. Yet.
It's a question I'm supposed to ask, and I don't know how anybody can answer it. Would we have done better during the war?
I really don't know. I think that we could have done more training in terms of teaching our people who go overseas with the civilians. I think by the Americans to hold that in their craw. That I knew that it would, and I just feel that we could have had more training in that respect.
It doesn't seem to have changed very much in this country when you got back. It's been gone for, what, 2 or 3 years, really?
Well, yes, yes, I was, and it was very difficult to adjust. Very traumatic to come back. But as far as things changing, I don't guess they did change as much as we thought they changed. In my case, I just had no place to go as far as I didn't have a home in the United States. I didn't have any family in the United States. But I felt like it should have been home. And I ended up in Knoxville, as I said before, because I could claim in-state tuition. I graduated 3 times. I got my doctorate at UT in 1960. My master's degree in 58 or 50, and now 58, I guess.
What did you first go to work for after you graduated?
Well, I was working full-time while I was in school.
Oh, you were?
I was executive director of the children's home out on Cecil Street. And we took children from broken homes. And incidentally, my overseas experience and work with the soldiers helped me in my work with those people from broken homes and the parents. I worked there until 1955. I'd already gotten my bachelor's and was working on my, the reason I got my master's was I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to get my doctorate because working your own way, it's pretty tough. And my first job from there was at Miller's. And as a matter of fact, one of our board members, Jimmy Lee Clark, is the one that asked. I showed movies to the men in the hospitals. In other words, I'd go and help out the Red Cross people who were assigned to the hospitals. And I was one of the first to show movies on the ceilings to the paraplegics.
I didn't realize that either. What sure makes sense.
Well, it was a makeshift thing. I think in later years, that they did make equipment to do that. Our equipment really wasn't suitable for that.
You didn't have any thoughts about going to Vietnam, did you?
No, but I've had thoughts about going with the Peace Corps.
Have you?
Yeah, I have no family here.
Oh, well, ties.
After I came back to Knoxville to go to school, my younger brother's in California.
Really don't. Well, it's certainly not too late, because I notice an awful lot of people 60 and above get in that thing and do a wonderful work.
I want to show you something.
Yeah.
Incidentally, that desk in there and that